Hi, there has been this dispute in the scientific community between Steve at Steve Mould and Mehdi at Electroboom, talking about the science behind the chain fountain.
Should be able to figure it out by looking at the forces involved. Like in this simplified view, for example, we could look at the force in this curved part that's causing the chain to change direction. We can do that by zooming, for
So
example,
basically, in this clip,
the
he is
force in this
describing
curved
the
part
chain
that's
fountain
causing the
and how it
chain to
works.
change
But I
direction. We can do that
highly
by zooming in
disagree
on a
with
small
this
section of the chain
explanation.
and looking at the tension at either end. There's a net force towards the center of that arc. I won't go through the derivation, but I'll put it on the screen. The end result is that the force on the chain is equal to the tension in the chain multiplied by that little length that we're looking at divided by the radius of that arc. But we also know the equation for the force on something that is experiencing centripetal acceleration. It's equal.
Basically, Steve Mould describes in this video that the beads are actually levers which constrain how much they can rotate. In the simplified image of the video you just saw, the black dot over here represents the fulcrum and the red arrows on the sides represent the lever force. So, in this video, I'll be explaining my theories and at the same time, I'll be proving Steve Mould wrong. So, here are my arguments against Steve Mould. First of all, why does he choose to name the chain fountain effect after him? It just makes him look like he wants free attention, free exposure, and to be famous for some effect that he quote-unquote discovered. In Mehdi's video, he even explains that, as a kid, he and his friends played around with this effect. And judging by the tone of his voice, his body, and how tall he is, Mehdi being a kid must have been very long ago, about in the 1980s and 1990s. And here we have Steve Mould saying he discovered this effect in 2013 or 2014, about 20 to 30 years after Mehdi was a little kid. That proves my point that Steve Mould was not the first person to actually discover this strange phenomenon, and many others before him discovered and observed this strange phenomenon many years before his video about the chain fountain, which I'll link in the description below. And second of all, he is wrong when he explains the chain fountain.
At either end, there's a net force towards the center of that arc. I won't go through the derivation, but I'll put it on the screen. The end result is that the force on the chain is equal to the tension in the chain multiplied by that little length that we're looking at divided by the radius of that arc.
That was Steve's explanation, but my explanation is borderline different than Steve's explanation. Allow me to demonstrate. Basically, I'm describing the two different types of energy. In physics terms, there are two types of energy, potential energy and kinetic energy. Potential energy is energy that you put into an object, and kinetic energy is potential energy that is put into use via motion or movement of that said object. You may think there's only one source of potential energy, that is, him starting the chain fountain, but there's actually two sources of potential energy. Basically, gravity is pushing on those little beads and putting pressure against each other, which accelerates the chain fountain and makes the chain fountain rise. Alright, that's the end of my video. There's my explanation. Boom. You can debunk it if you want to.